On June 12, 2025 at 13:37, Air India Flight 171 started its takeoff roll on the runway. At 13:38 and 33 seconds, the aircraft reached V1, the decision speed beyond which takeoff must continue. Within the next 2 seconds, it reached VR, the rotation speed at which the nose is lifted for takeoff. 4 seconds later, at 13:38 and 39 seconds, the plane lifted off the runway. By 13:38 and 42 seconds, the aircraft had accelerated to its peak airspeed of 180 knots. After that, the speed started dropping. This means the plane began having problems just 4 seconds after becoming airborne. That's when the engine fuel was cut off. That too, with only a 1 second interval between each action. At 13:38 and 47 seconds, the ram air turbine deployed and the hydraulic system activated, all within a span of 5 seconds. Within 5 seconds, each fuel switch was shut off 1 second apart, followed by the automatic or manual deployment of the RAT and activation of the hydraulic system. Keep this point in mind. After the fuel cut off, there was a conversation between the two pilots. "Why did you cut off the fuel?" one asked. The other pilot replied, "I didn't do that." At 13:38 and 56 seconds, which was 12 seconds after the fuel cutoff, both fuel supplies were turned back on. After that, the engine started gaining power. But before both engines could regain thrust, the aircraft hadn't reached sufficient altitude, leaving the crew with limited time. At 13:39 and 15 seconds, the pilot made a mayday call to ATC, and 6 seconds later, the EAFR stopped recording. This report remains highly controversial to this day. People believe it was made this way to protect the image of a certain company, with the tone and direction suggesting that the mistakes was made by the pilot. Nowadays, most people believe that this report lacked clarity. I also believe that the AAIB hold more information than what was selectively disclosed to the public. In the official report, the acronym FADEC was incorrectly expanded as Full Authority Dual Engine Control instead of Full Authority Digital Engine Control, raising questions about the attention to detail in such a critical document. Strangely, there was no mention of EICA system in the report, a key cockpit display that alerts pilot to system failure and warnings, something that should have provided crucial insights during those final moments. Another crucial device, the Emergency Locator Transmitter (ELT), failed to activate. This beacon is specifically designed to transmit a distress signal if an aircraft crashes in a remote area, such as a forest or over the sea. Its silence here remains unexplained. In the final seconds, Engine 1 showed signs of recovery, while Engine 2 remained unresponsive. Could this point to a deeper mechanical fault in one of the engines? Internal whistleblowers from Boeing have previously alleged that the company sometimes installed defective parts under pressure, claims that now seem disturbingly relevant. The report frequently uses vague terms like immediately and right after, instead of precise timestamps. In an accident where the total flight duration was just 32 seconds, every moment matters. When exactly did both engines fail? At what second did the pilot exclaim, "Why did you cut off the fuel?" When was the RAT deployed? The report only mentions when the RAT began generating power, not when it was deployed. Such ambiguous phrasing leaves room for manipulation and weakens the integrity of the investigation's timeline. Things haven't been explained clearly or transparently. Understandably, opinions on this matter may vary. To back up my points, I picked up a few key issues. Let's examine these points in greater detail. Point number 1. The landing gear not being retracted. Normally, right after takeoff, the plane's landing gear is usually retracted once it reaches about 50 feet in the air. But in Air India Flight 171, the landing gear was never pulled up. The pilot left it down because as soon as the plane lifted off, there was probably some engine trouble. The pilot likely anticipated the need for an emergency landing. In emergencies like this, when a plane is about to come down unexpectedly, the landing gear isn't retracted. The pilot may have already known the aircraft was in distress, making landing gear retraction unnecessary. That's why the landing gear was never raised. The pilot didn't overlook retracting the gear, it was a deliberate decision based on the situation. Point number 2. Whenever there's a problem with the engine, like an engine failure or a fire, the fuel supply is cut off to stop fuel from going to the faulty engine. There are 2 switches for this. Whenever the fuel needs to be cut off, suppose there's a problem with the plane's right engine, cut off fuel to that engine. To do this, first the right engine's thrust lever has to be brought to idle. Once it's idle, then the fuel switch for the right engine can be cut off. Fuel isn't cut off directly. Whenever pilots cut off fuel, they never do it directly. They have to bring the thrust lever to idle first. But according to this report, the pilot kept the thrust lever in the takeoff position until the last moment. So how was the fuel supply interrupted? That's the critical situation addressed in the next point. Point number 3. How did the fuel cutoff happen? According to the report, the fuel was cut off, and this point was added very carefully in the report. Along with that, it was also mentioned that both pilots talked to each other. Why did you cut off the fuel? I didn't do that. From these 2 small lines, what do we get? It seems like the pilot either deliberately or accidentally cut off the fuel. Some news outlets exploited this narrative prematurely. Just take a look at this BBC report. Pilot cut off fuel. No fault with plane. Dear BBC, tell me who gave you the right to use the word pilot? Even the official report doesn't say that the pilot cut off the fuel. So who are you to accuse the pilot? And before the investigation is even done, it's already clear there's no fault with the plane. It's concerning that a major news outlet would use such speculative language. The investigation into whether the aircraft itself was at fault is still ongoing, but these media channels often draw conclusions before the facts are established. After putting up the title, when people gave it a lot of backlash, then they changed the title. Anyway, talking about the fuel cutoff, the Boeing 787 works on fly-by-wire technology. It means that whenever the pilot uses any controls, the signal first goes to the computer and the computer then commands to move that control. This indicates that aircraft's onboard computer can intervene and shut down the fuel supply autonomously. A thrust control malfunction accommodation circuit called TCMA was installed in Boeing 787. Its job is to send a signal to the FCU if there's any problem in the engine. FCU stands for Fuel Control Unit. This FCU cuts off the fuel supply to the engine that's having trouble, stopping fuel from reaching the faulty engine. This means the computer has the power to cut off fuel even against the pilot's wishes. Was there a genuine engine anomaly that prompted the FCU to shut down the fuel supply, or did some pilot do it deliberately or accidentally? We can figure out that by looking at the timing. The report states that both fuel switches were disengaged with a 1-second interval. But these switches have a safety system too. The switch must be pulled, moved to the cutoff position, and then released to terminate fuel flow. Now, ask yourself, can a human perform that sequence in 1 second? Or was it the computer? Honestly, I think none of the pilot cut off the fuel. It must have been the plane's faulty computer that did it. Only a full investigation can confirm this. Point number 4. In December 2018, the Federal Aviation Administration published an SAIB. In simple terms, it means certain aircraft systems may develop faults over time. When that happens, the Federal Aviation Administration issues a bulletin explaining what the problem is and how to handle it. In December 2018, the Federation Aviation Administration published an SAIB stating that the fuel control switch lock mechanism could fail and disengage on its own without the pilot's consent. At the same time, the malfunction was reported in the fuel switch of Boeing 737 aircraft, and that same model of faulty switch was reported installed on the Boeing 787 in the Ahmedabad crash. Here's the thing, according to the rules, the Federal Aviation Administration did their part. They would say, look, we issued an advisory warning that there could be a problem with the fuel supply cutting off. You can check your planes if you want. Meanwhile, Air India also washed their hands off, saying it was merely an advisory, not a mandatory directive. Hence, the fuel system wasn't inspected. It's disheartening. Both parties distances themselves from the responsibility. while passengers bore the risk. If you look at the report, it says there's no need to take any action on the Boeing 787 yet. But it's clear to us that there's a problem with the fuel switch. Even the FAA's report acknowledges a flaw in the fuel switch locking mechanism. Yet, according to the report, no action is needed. This raises a critical question. Will corrective action only be taken after another incident occurs? Let's try to understand this in the next point. Point number 5. How much influence does Boeing really have? We've already seen this in the past. When Boeing created a software called MCAS, the MCAS system could automatically lower the aircraft's nose without pilot input. Even if the pilots wanted to, they couldn't save the plane. The very technology caused the Lion Air Flight 610 crash, killing 189 people. Boeing remained silent for months, repeatedly denying responsibility. Even Boeing's own engineers and some investigators must have known the crash happened because of the MCAS. But everyone stayed silent. Because of this silence, within 6 months, another plane from Ethiopian Airlines also crashed, killing 157 people. Following multiple fatalities and subsequent investigation reports, the same MCAS issue resurfaced. Only then did Boeing have to accept that there was a glitch in their technology. If Boeing had admitted it earlier, maybe the second plane crash would have been avoided. Staying silent led to another plane crashing. Perhaps we are repeating history, staying silent in the face of potential design flaws. Who knows if because of this silence another Air India crash happens tomorrow? Maybe then we'll finally wake up and regret not ordering a fuel supply check back then. All Boeing planes' fuel switch should have been inspected, which the Federal Aviation Administration hadn't made mandatory, just issued an advisory, which should have been mandatory. Anyway, this might seem like a bold claim from someone not in the industry. Smarter people than me are already working on this case. Everyone has their own opinion, and theirs might be different from mine. I've simply shared my perspective from my consideration. ALPA, the Airplane Pilots Association of India, representing Indian flight crew professionals, said the tone and direction of the report suggests it's pilot's error. They explicitly rejected the preliminary findings and called for a fair and unbiased investigation. No one should be pressured and everything should be based on facts. While I'm not a pilot, I believe concerns raised by experienced flight crew should not be dismissed. Point number 6. ALPA alleged that the report was leaked and prematurely disseminated to the media. Qualified and experienced personnel, especially line pilots, still haven't been included in the investigation. The Wall Street Journal was reportedly informed of the fuel switch investigation approximately 44 hours before the official release. How could such sensitive safety-related information be leaked ahead of official disclosure? It's really shocking. Could this be an effort to safeguard Boeing's reputation? After considering all these points, what do you think? You can drop your thoughts in the comments. Today I'll be reading all your comments. That concludes this video for now. If you liked the video, give it a like. If not, feel free to dislike. Either way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more informative content. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep watching, keep learning.